It's very easy for us engineers and project engineers and project managers to get, well, a whole bunch of projects on our table. We easily get 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 projects, and it becomes very overwhelming trying to remember all those dates. Have you ever had that time when you can't remember when you're supposed to submit this, or did you submit already, or did you already finish designing a certain part of the drawing, or have you experienced, like, I got 15 things due today and I know I can only do 1 or 2 of those? Or are you just overwhelmed with all these tasks that are coming up and you just can't do them all? Well, it is a tough thing to do. As a project engineer, as a project manager, multi-projects is a norm for us, and we have to know how to handle that load of various types of projects and how to handle the tasks and keep them on the timelines that we're required to do. And we're going to cover in this video exactly some techniques that you can use in order to make it a little bit easier having multiple projects on your table. And we're going to do that right now. For every project engineer, project manager, no matter what discipline you're in, you're going to have a lot of projects to work on. Rarely will you have just one project that you're responsible for. Quite often, most project engineers and project managers in engineering have multiple projects that they're dealing with at the same time, and they're expected to meet the timelines and to stay on budget. In this video, I'm going to give you 8 techniques on how to handle multiple projects all at the same time. So keep on watching this video until we give you the last technique, number 8, because it's going to be probably the most important one of them all. The first technique that you need to be aware of in order to stay on track with all your different projects, knowing your milestones for each of your projects makes it easier for you if you know that a certain task is due today and the other tasks that you have aren't due until maybe tomorrow or the next day. You can then prioritize all of your tasks so you can get the main one done on time. The second technique that I would highly recommend is that you know your team so well that you know who the person is as your go-to person in your team. The person in your team that you can take a task that's really important that needs to get done, but you just don't have the time to do it. And so you can hand it over to them and say, can you please take this task and finish it for me? Because I got to work on some other ones and it's really important and it is due today. Can you handle that for me? And more than likely, if they're your go-to guy, they're going to say, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll drop some of these other things I'm working on and pick that up and take care of it for you today. The third technique is that you know what works and then you document everything about that project. For each project you have, no matter how small it is or how large it is, you need to make sure you have a project folder. And in the folder, you're documenting everything that's occurred. What has been finished? What are you working on now? And what is coming up to be done? This can be done by hand, writing on a piece of paper and sticking it into the folder, or it can even be done electronically on your computer or even on the internet. So you want to make sure when you're documenting items about your project that you keep it in a place either on your computer or on the network or on a cloud where other people can have access to it to find out where you're at with the project. Let's say that you are handing off that important task to that go-getter on your team. Instead of him having to ask you where you're at with the project, he can easily go onto the company's network and pull up the directory for that project, see where you're at with some sort of schedule in there, and say, okay, I know what he's got done so far. This is what he needs me to do, write a letter. I have the information available. I can now fill out that letter, a basic form letter, and then complete the task for him and hand it back to him so that he can then finish that task for today. So now you know what works and you've documented it. It's in a project folder, preferably in a directory in your company network or even on the cloud, but at least it's handwritten and put in an actual folder in a file cabinet so that someone else can access it and know where you're at with the project. The fourth technique that can handle multiple projects is to stay focused. If you have a milestone that has to be done today, and you're going to take most of the day to do that work, you got to stay focused all day long to finish that task. That means you don't let anything interrupt you. You don't let anybody interrupt you. You don't let any distractions occur, like maybe surfing the internet or talking on the phone too long or looking up some information that has nothing to do with the project or helping someone else to finish their task and not yours. Staying focused means you do nothing else but you work on that task until it's done. Let's say you have a drainage study that you're compiling and that you have to get it out today before 4 o'clock. So you work all day long compiling that drainage study, getting all the individual texts into the study, making sure you've read through it, that you've checked that document from top to bottom, that all the words are spelled correctly, that you're referencing the right streets, the right basins, the right flow numbers, all the tables match one another. And so you've checked all that. Then you got to make sure all your drawings are done, all your exhibits are done. You've checked all that. Everything's good and put into the folder. You've checked all your checklists, making sure those are all done and put into the document. You even gone to the print shop and make sure that everything's printed correctly, that the binding is done correctly. And then you even make sure that it's delivered to the entity for submittal on time. So all that is being totally focused on it and not letting any other distractions except the one task in front of you. That's one way of handling multiple projects, is that each day you're focusing on the main task, and all other tasks that are not a priority for that day, you kind of set them aside or you delegate them off to somebody else, and you stay focused on that one single task. The fifth technique that we highly recommend is that you communicate with your team what's important, what has to be done today. You don't have your team working on multiple different things if you have a main task of getting something done by today or tomorrow, and you're going to need everyone's attention on that task to get it done. Yes, you may have multiple milestones for today and tomorrow. Maybe you have to have 2 or 3 tasks done, but all those other tasks that aren't a priority should be set aside and everyone working on the same task to get it done on time. The sixth technique that we recommend is that you plan everything before you start. Now, in project design, what we do, a lot of the projects that we do are very similar to one another. And so the process is very similar. So we get into a routine. We know that, okay, we know how this process works. We know it takes a couple of weeks for this to happen, 3 months for that, 6 months before that, 9 months before the permit is issued. We get into kind of a routine with that, and we become more of a reactionary type of design team, and that doesn't work well. Instead, what you should start off every project, you should have a chart laid out. I have a project that's going to take 9 months to complete. Along this 9 months, I'm going to have certain milestones that are going to be due all along the way. And if I hit those milestones on those key dates, then the project will finish on time and on budget. That's what you do initially. Now you can use what's called a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is very common in our industry. As the project progresses, it has different tasks that need to be done, and each one has a duration of time, a start and a finish date. And if all those are done in order and in the specific times they're called out, the project finishes on time. Another type of chart is the Kanban chart. Is more or less a task-oriented chart. It shows what tasks are planned, but yet hasn't been assigned yet. Then it also shows what tasks that the team is working on, and also shows what tasks have been completed. So you can kind of watch along this chart and know how well the project's progressing. You know exactly where what you have coming up, what you're working on, and what you've finished. For many design teams, a Kanban chart is very efficient, especially for the design team itself, instead of looking up on a board and trying to figure out a Gantt chart. Gantt charts are more for a project management level, and usually project engineers and project managers use that. Whereas the Kanban chart is very beneficial towards a team for them to know what tasks they need to be working on. Of course, the grandparent of the Kanban chart is lists. When I first started my engineering career, my boss, he used a big yellow pad, and he would have on his yellow pad all these tasks that he needed to finish on his project. Every time a task would come up, he would write it down on his yellow pad. And as he finished those tasks, he would line out that task, and then he knows what tasks are coming up that he needs to do. And then he could assign various tasks to the team. And then, of course, next to each of the tasks, he had who he had assigned to work on that task, so he would always follow up. Now, of course, if he lost the yellow pad or something like spilled some coffee in his yellow pad, he was in a hurry trying to rewrite his list. And sometimes these lists were 3, 4, 5 pages long for each project, but it is one way of doing it. But the more modern way is, of course, use your computer and go on and use some software like Microsoft Projects, or even something like ClickUp or Monday.com or these other apps that you can find on the internet that makes it a lot easier. Smartsheet is also another good source of that. Asana is good for that. Trello is also good for it. So those are different types of programs that you can go on the internet and be able to list out these tasks and have people working on those tasks. And then as they finish them, they sign them off. So that's a very good technique when you're trying to handle multiple projects. The 7th technique that we recommend when you're handling these multiple projects is that you continually update your plan by constantly monitoring your plan. If you have a Gantt chart for each of your projects, and as you progress along every day, you should be able to look on your Gantt chart and be able to determine whether you're on schedule, or a little bit behind schedule, or way behind schedule. And if you are, you know you got to make adjustments. Where can I make up some time here and get this back on track so I can get to that milestone on the date I'm supposed to? So that's the main job of a project manager, is constantly watching those schedules, constantly watching those Gantt charts. If you got 10, 20, 30 projects, that's your daily job, is going in and making sure you're constantly on schedule and making notes on how you can get back on schedule. You looking at your resources. Who's not very busy right now that I can put onto this task and get them working and finishing that task so I can get this back on track? Maybe you need to go outsource and find someone else that can work on the task, finish it for you, and then that gets your team back on schedule. Maybe you need some more resources. Maybe a computer went down and you need a new one, okay? Maybe renew the license for your AutoCAD or whatever. Whatever the case is, you need to make sure you stay on track and make sure your resources are there to keep you on track. And so that's what you're doing, is constantly watching and observing those tasks on each and every project and making sure they're being handled until you get to the very end and that project's done, and then you can replace it with another project. Now, before we talk about the 8th technique, please go ahead and subscribe down below to our channel. If you're struggling being a project engineer or a project manager in the management part of engineering, we highly recommend that you go ahead and go down below, subscribe to our channel. You want to make sure that as we upload new videos, that you get to see them and kind of refresh yourself a little bit about managing projects and people and a business of engineering. Also, when you go down below, make sure you hit that bell down there, and that way every time we upload, you'll get notified. And if you got a few minutes at that time, go ahead and turn the video on, and in about 5 to 10 minutes long, you'll get to learn something new, or probably refresh your memory about something in management and make your life as a manager a whole lot easier in the engineering profession. Now, that 8th technique that we highly recommend in maintaining multiple projects, well, that is to throw everything you got at it, okay? There is anything and everything available. If you got software that's laying around that's good for managing projects, turn it on and use it. Smartsheet is a great resource online that you can go to, fill out a Gantt chart, and then be able to follow along. Another one, and probably the main software that all of us engineers are very familiar with, is Microsoft Projects. They now are online also. It's slightly a little bit different, but it starts as basis with Gantt charts. and then you can follow along with that. It's gotten a little bit more task-oriented with the newer versions of it. But there's also other applications that you can find on the internet, such as ClickUp, which is the one I use and I highly recommend. ClickUp uses Gantt charts, but it also uses Kanban, list, calendar, and all these others. But it also has other things on it for notifications. You can do documents on it. You can set up your SOP, your standard operating procedures, and go on there. ClickUp is one of my favorite project management tools, and I highly recommend using that particular software. Although Microsoft Project is the one I learned on and use in project management, and I still use it to this day, but I'm getting more and more so towards ClickUp. There's other software. Originally, when I was doing just tasks and trying to follow along with tasks, we started off with Trello. And I kind of noticed that Trello was good when you would say, okay, I need a task done. And as soon as I did it, check it off. The problem with Trello is that it didn't really kind of give me the feel of a start date and end date. I couldn't really work with it with other people on the team. They kind of knew about it, but they kind of didn't feel good with it. So it didn't really work for me, but maybe it'll work for you. So we moved from there. We went to Asana, ASANA, and that worked a little bit better. It was a little bit easier to follow. I find that I use Asana in another organization that I work with, and it works fine with that one. Our tasks are very short term, just a couple of days usually, and so using Asana, we assign the tasks to the various people on our team in that organization, and they finish it and they move it over to the completed column. And then that way we all know that task is done. It's also very good at putting documents on it within the various cards. You can put notes in there. You can send messages to one another. And it just works very, very good for that type of organization. But in engineering design, I still found it was didn't really work for us very well. And because our projects are long-term and the task can take months sometimes to complete. And so it didn't work for us as well as I'd liked, and so that's why I went to ClickUp. And ClickUp is an excellent program. It's free, and it for us at least, we don't need it much. We don't need the paid version of it, but the free version works very well for us as a small engineering design firm. There's other competitors to it, like I said, Smartsheet's one. Also, Monday.com is very competitive. It's probably very similar. And there's other types of project management software that you can find for your PC, on your laptops, or even you can find it for online. But you want to use those things to solve multiple projects and the tasks and the overwhelming load that it can happen if you don't manage it from the get-go. Also, you got to look at your resources, all the skills that the people have on your team. Some of them are very good at handling some of the jobs that you do, and you can hand that off to them and let them finish it for you. As long as you're not affecting their main jobs, they can easily do some of the jobs that you need to have done. They can do it for you. And that's called delegating. And we have a video on that, delegating tasks. So that's it. The 8 techniques that we highly recommend to help you with dealing with multiple projects. The first technique was to know your project schedules. Know when the milestones were coming up. So that way you can prioritize your tasks and then work towards those milestones for each and every one of your projects. The second technique that we mentioned was to know your go-to member of your team. That person that can step in for you and help you out with your tasks. You can hand them over some things. I'm overwhelmed. I got too many tasks to do today. They're all due. Can you handle a couple of these? And he can easily pick it up and take care of it for you. The third technique was to learn what works and then to document it. In other words, have project folders, either in written project notes, put into a folder and put into a file cabinet. You can also do it online and have actual directories in your computer, your network, or even online at some cloud storage area so that other people on the team can come in and take a look and know where the project's at this moment. The fourth technique that we discussed was to stay focused. When you have something that has to be done today, you do nothing else but work on that task until it's done. You do everything you can to finish that task and do not get distracted on anything else. And that includes taking phone calls. If you know that a phone call is going to take 20, 30 minutes of your time away, that's 20, 30 minutes that you could have spent on that main task for today. Do not have distractions. The fifth technique is to communicate with your team. You want to make sure they know about your projects. They know the schedules. They know what the priorities are. You don't have them sitting over there in a room waiting for you to tell them what to do. You tell them, hey, these are our tasks. These are what has to be done. And they then will work on those tasks for you. Don't let them try to figure out what the priorities are. You tell them what tasks have the highest priority for today. The sixth technique was to plan before you do anything. In other words, for every single project, you sit down and you write out a schedule for that project. Make sure that you know when it's going to be done, by who, and how they're going to do it before you even start on it. And then as the project progresses, you make sure you stick to those milestones. The seventh technique is that you monitor your progress through each and every single project. You pick up those Gantt charts for each project and you make sure that you're on schedule, that each task is being done when it was planned to be done, that you're staying on schedule. And when you're not on schedule, to figure out what you got to do to get back on schedule, whether in-house or outsourced, so that you can stay on track with your project. And then the eighth technique is to use everything you got to handle those multiple projects. If you're not using some of the tools that you have, that management is giving you to use, and you're not using it, well, you're doing disservice to your company. They give you the tools for a reason. You need to use them. If you got people in your team that has multiple talents, use those talents. If you got project management software that's available to you, use that software, because multiple projects, this little brain right here, it can't remember it all. I don't care how good you are. You will miss a task and you will eventually not be able to meet any of your milestones on any of your projects if you don't watch the project on a daily basis. So that's it. The 8 techniques for handling multiple projects in your engineering design firm. If you're a project engineer or a project manager or just an engineer, if you want to learn more about the business of engineering and how to manage your company and how to manage a team and how to show leadership with your team, then please go ahead and subscribe to our channel and you'll be notified as we upload new videos. Also, you'll notice another video over here that's, we recommend you to watch on the leadership, on the management, or on the engineering skills needed in order to be a successful project engineer and project manager. So until the next time, keep on learning, keep on growing, and we'll see you on the next video.